All right, I think we should start. So, welcome to this webinar on the LDE minor, Sustainable Chemistry and Biotechnology. Just for everyone present here, a minor is something that you do in the third year of your bachelor studies, normally. So, I also saw that some people from high school have registered for this minor, which is fine. You're all very welcome, but it's not a separate bachelor study. It is a choice of courses that you do for half a year in your third year of a regular bachelor education. So this particular minor is about sustainable chemistry and biotechnology, and I'd like to explain you why we organized this minor. Let me first introduce myself. My name is Professor Marcellus Ubbink, and I'm the academic coordinator of this minor. And here you see the minor team. So we have two content coordinators that are responsible for coordinating the content of the different courses that we give and make sure that everything is streamlined and makes good sense as a package as a whole. Sarlas is also here. She's the education coordinator, so she's responsible for all kind of practical aspects relating to registration and these kind of things. So she will be happy to answer questions at the end of the presentation about all practical aspects about this minor. And later on, we also will listen to one of the former students of last year's edition of the minor, Wessel de Kok, and he will introduce himself in a minute. So why a minor about sustainable chemistry and biotechnology? Well, maybe it's obvious, maybe it begs the question. So mankind is facing really major changes in the way we live and the way we deal with Earth if we are to sustain ourselves as a species on this planet for more than a few decades in the future. Because in the last, say, 50 years or so, we have major impact on how we use the planet. You can think about the energy transition. Of course, we all want to get rid of fossil fuels and reduce the CO2 footprint that we have as a species on Earth. But there's much more to it. So the land use is a major issue. How are we using the land to produce our food, but also other products that we need for a sustainable society? That leads to loss of biodiversity. The more forest that we cut down, the more species we lose of this planet. So that's the biodiversity that is getting less. The way we pollute things is of big impact. So we produce lots of products, and all these products and production processes and products lead to waste. And that contaminates the waters and the oceans and the air and the earth, for example. Of course, the climate change, I mentioned CO2 already. So the climate is changing because of the CO2 that we produce and other climate change gases like methane. So there is a lot of things, different things happening at the same time with our dealing with the planet. Major reason for that, of course, being that we have been growing as a species to now 8 billion people. And half of that happened in the last 30 years or so. So the impact is rapidly increasing. So if we want to sustain on this species, on Earth as a species, we will need to go work in a circular way of living, just like nature does. Everything that we do should be recycled, everything that we use, everything that we produce, and the energy for that should be sustainable, so coming from wind or sun. That requires a major change in how we look at this. So I show this picture here of Paul Crutzen, who was a Dutch Nobel Prize winner, and he was famous for his work on the ozone layer. So the gases that damage the ozone layer. He helped us to understand what happens high up in the stratosphere, and that is kind of a relatively small problem that we are addressing now, and the ozone hole is getting smaller. It's not gone yet, but it is manageable. But compared to that, all the difficulties that I mentioned before are enormous. And he was the guy who coined the name Anthropocene. So scene refers to an era in geology where something is happening. You have all these different periods in the geology where and the dinosaurs lived, for example. And the Anthropocene refers to the fact that mankind is in this era of time actually changing the Earth. So how the Earth looks is now influenced significantly by what we do, our doings affect the CO2, affect what the planet looks like, affect what happens in the oceans, and so on. That's why he called it the Anthropocene, anthropo being human. So this minor focuses on chemistry and biotechnology. And why is that? Because chemistry and biotechnology will be a major factor in changing to a circular environment, a circular economy, a way of living. Right? There's so many aspects in all these changes that we need to do that are of chemical or biotechnological nature. There's a few examples here. So energy production, like solar panels, there's a lot of chemistry in there, all kind of materials that need to collect the sunlight, convert it into electricity. That's all material chemistry, essentially. We will soon need to go to hydrogen gas as a clean fuel, right? We need fuels. We cannot do everything only with electricity. At some point you need to store electricity, store energy in the form of a fuel. And hydrogen gas is going to be very clean alternative to fossil fuels. But to make hydrogen gas is quite complicated. A lot of chemistry involved, also very fundamental chemistry of redox potentials, and so redox chemistry, bio-based fuels. So other fuels than hydrogen could be formic acid, for example, or methane produced in bio reactors. All that requires a lot of biotechnology and chemistry. Energy conservation is also going to be very important. We need to reduce the total energy that we use, not only find alternative ways, but also reduce the energy. And also that requires chemical solutions often. Products, we make a lot of stuff, right? We make all kinds of products. We make food, but we make also all kinds of convenience, clothing, electronics, and so on. And all that requires feedstocks. Feedstocks are the stuff that you use to produce something else, something new, right? And often the feedstock, of course, is oil. So fossil oil that will be need to be replaced. All the plastics are made of ultimately of oil that need to be replaced somehow with biodegradable alternatives that can be completely recycled. So that is biotechnology and chemistry. The chemistry itself, the processes that take you from oil or a bio feedstock to a product, to a plastic, or to, I don't know, mobile phone, all require chemical processes, and they can be quite dirty as well and pollute the environment. So you will need to get cleaner chemistry. And recycling itself, how do you recycle all these materials? So all these are topics that we discuss in this minor. And as I said, nature knows how to recycle. So let's get inspired by how nature can do this. And right, almost everything in nature is recycled, no matter how complicated the molecule is that is made by an organism. And somehow there's other bugs that can break it down again and reuse all the atoms that are in there. So here you see an overview of the program. On the left, you see the course EC. So that's the number of credits that you get in total. It is 30 EC. Right, because it is half a year of studying, so a minor is 30 EC. And you see the different courses that we have. So the first one is an introduction to all these different topics that I mentioned, element cycles and so on. And that's called Anthropocene, the planet of man. There's green chemistry, energy transition, chemical energy. There's a group project, and I will tell you more about these in a second. And then there is sustainable chemistry and the chemical industry based on non-fossil feedstocks. So how do we produce materials without using oil, essentially? Energy transition, photon power, so that's related to energy transition, chemical energy. And then examples from industry, because yeah, we can think of a lot of things in academia, but how does it actually work in industry? And the group project that already started here is continuing here. But let's have a quick look at these courses. So the first half of the semester, so 1/4 of a year, is Anthropocene, the planet of man, we call that. So that's an introduction into element cycles. You need to understand what does nature do with nitrogen, with phosphorus, with carbon, all these important elements. How they are they converted into each other? If you want to recycle something, you need to understand the basic life cycle of elements. We talk about energy, all these different possibilities for sustainable energy. I mentioned already wind and solar, but there's also thermal heat from the earth, for example, or tidal energy. There's all kinds of other alternatives. Circular production and use of materials and climate change. So all these different topics will briefly be in focus in the Anthropocene course, so that you get a good overview of the different issues that are relevant for a circular society. Then green chemistry, that is about the chemical industry itself. So new, cleaner reactions. What do we do with solvents? What reactants can we use and reuse again? Energy transition, chemical energy has to do with clean energy production. So how can we, especially how can we make hydrogen? What do we need to in practice to go to a hydrogen society? And then the group project is a kind of follow-up of the Anthropocene. And the Anthropocene is also small groups that study certain problems, but that is always very short, like 2 days or so. And in the group project, then you will form one group and really go into more depth for one particular problem of the circular society. Then we have the second half. So the second half of the semester is the sustainable chemical industry based on non-fossil feedstock. So what kind of routes are available for the conversion of recycling feedstock? So what can we use over again and again that are renewable, stuff that we can grow on the land and use it for biofuel production, for example. Right. So instead of using oil to make petrol, how can we use, for example, sugarcane to do it? Energy transition, photon power has to do with, obviously with the light. So how do we use light to produce electricity? Photochemical processes, we use photosynthesis in nature as a source of inspiration. Nature is very good at photosynthesis. Obviously, it's everywhere around you where you see a green plant, photosynthesis is going on. But how can we harness that energy from the sun in a way that is useful for us, so we can produce electricity or store that energy somehow into fuels or biomass. And then, as I mentioned, examples from sustainable industry. So there will be guest lectures from people who actually work in companies that are busy with converting their processes to cleaner, to clean alternatives. And then the group project, in which you dive into one of these problems yourself and really go to the bottom and find out what you can do about it in the future.
My name is Wessel de Kok. A bit about me, I'm an LST student and I'm mainly interested in industrial biotechnology and environmental biotechnology. And well, before I did this minor, well, I knew there was a problem of global warming. We have to emit less CO2, but I was wondering, okay, how do we do that? How can I make a difference in my field? And as well, how can I make a difference in my personal life? And that was my motivation for following this minor. And I'm going to tell you something about the takeaways, the people I worked with, and my favorite moment, which indeed is the group project. So for the takeaways, we always hear, well, we have to emit less CO2, we have to use fewer harmful chemicals. And well, okay, we know this, but how do we do it? And one of the good things about this minor is that you learn how to analyze a process and how to look at it in a sustainable manner. This is, for example, done in the green chemistry course, where you get to analyze the production of a single chemical and look at it and analyze, okay, how can we do this in a more sustainable manner? You also get a lot of tools for sustainability. There are, in the lectures, there are a number of cases, also from the guest lectures, where you learn, okay, how was it done previously? Can I take inspiration for this? Which means that you can be sustainable in practice. And what I found out during this minor, which I didn't expect, is that you encounter the state of the art a lot. Sustainability is an important topic. And it was frequently so that in the projects which I worked in, we got to cite papers which were published the last month. And for the group project, we even got to cite one which came out a few days before the deadline, because it was such a hot topic, which I found very nice and very inspiring. Then you also get to meet a lot of people during this minor. There are a lot of projects in which you can work together. I find that very nice because then in the lectures you can also socialize a bit, and you're not just following the lectures on your own, but you actually get to make friends, which is always very nice. But also I noticed that you have very different backgrounds. So for example, I'm an LSD student. I'm interested in microorganisms. And for one of the projects, Photon Power, I got to work with a lot of MST students who knew more about the chemistry and how to design a plant, which led us to designing a plant which made cyanobacteria produce a certain chemical, which we could then further process. And it was very nice working off each other in this manner. My favorite moment was the group project. You get a lot of freedom during this subject. You get to pick a subject of research and you analyze how it could be made more sustainable. For my group, we asked ourselves the question, okay, we know we can produce cultured meat, but could we replace the entire meat industry with cultured meat, preferably by 2050? We got to do a lot of interviews with experts, which is well, much better than just reading their papers, but you get to ask them questions, and we sometimes get very unexpected outcomes. And on the last day of the minor, we got to present our results to everyone, but we also got to see the presentations of all the other groups. And some of the other groups really managed to do a lot, managed to get two research departments from different universities talking together about a specific subject, for example, which was really cool to see that everyone, well, really did something concrete and did it basically on their own, because, as I said, you get a lot of freedom, which I found very nice compared to the usual projects where you're told, okay, do this, do that, and you just get a checklist. At the end of the minor, I was very satisfied. I learned a lot from it, which I will certainly be using later in my career.
So we have a website where you can find much more information here on the Leiden University website of the Leiden Institute of Chemistry, because that is formally where the minor is housed. And I can put this up later again if you want to copy that address, or if you just type the minor SCB, then you will find it. So a few things, a few practical aspects here. So I already saw in the chat for whom is this minor accessible. So it is a selection minor in the sense that we say everybody who participates should have at least some chemistry in their bachelor. So if you study a bachelor where you have a basic chemistry course in there, you are admissible to this minor. If you don't have that, then you can still apply if you have good reasons to say, yeah, but I have a very good background in chemistry for other reasons, and you can write to us, so to Sarlas, and motivate it, and then there is an admission committee to judge your application. But primarily it is for people who have at least some background in chemistry, because otherwise the minor is a bit difficult. So the forms of work that we do are very diverse. As I said before, we have group work where we do reading, discussions, presentations. There's of course regular lectures. There's many guest speakers from industry and also from other expert institutions. There are seminars. There are academic skills training is also an important part of the minor. So the group work is not only working in groups, but also learning how to work in groups, what are tasks and what are functions in a group, and so on. Presentation skills are practiced, of course, in all these assessments. Writing essays. There are some written exams in the more regular way, and there is also peer assessment as part of the assessment procedure. So registration needs to occur between April 1 and April 15. That's mandatory because it is a selection minor. So you select you get selected for this minor or not. If you don't get selected, you can still go to another minor, which the non-selection minors close much later, I think in June. Yeah, that is the practical aspects. I think, as I said, Sarlas is here also to answer more questions about that. So with that, I would like to end the presentation and open the floor for questions. I hope to see you all in September, of course. in this minor. One question might be, is there a maximum? So we have a maximum of 60 participants. Last year we did not make that. We had 40 the first time around, 40 students. So I don't expect it to be overwritten, but yeah, you never know, of course, how popular it gets.